I mean, Spock has like a whole side of him which isn't even human. He probably, as a result of that, is maybe a little bit super intelligent, but Oliver Wolf would definitely give him a run for his money. I would love to see that episode of Jeopardy! Dr. Oliver Wolf is actually based on the life of Oliver Sachs, very renowned neurologist who lived and worked in the mid to late 20th century. He died in 2015 at the age of 83. It's kind of been a dream as an actor because I get all of the benefits of the real life Oliver Sacks, but I get to create a character on my own. But I've never played a character that's inspired by a real life person but exists in a totally different world. I mean, he was really regarded as one of the preeminent neurologists, certainly of his time. And also the New York Times called him the poet laureate of medicine because he was very concerned with capturing the experiences of his patients in his writing. And so he wrote books and innumerable case studies of patients that he worked with and many essays. And he wrote a beautiful memoir toward the end of his life as well. So it's been incredible for that reason alone. And then add to it all of the amazing people that I've gotten to work with on the show, and Michael Grassi, our showrunner, and our staff of incredible writers. And the world that they've created has been really vivid and really a joy to immerse myself in.
You're a doctor. You put this facility at risk. We get it.
You want to change how your patients see the world.
I want to change how the world sees my patients.
For me, it was really about reading and watching him. He's given many lectures over the years, and I was able to spend hours on YouTube just watching him talk. He was motivated by this idea that he always wanted to understand and experience, whenever possible, the same sensations and the same perspectives that his patients were experiencing. And so he was very unconventional in how he went about that.
Putting myself in the same state of mind as the patient will help us understand their condition.
Did you just take a patient's drugs?
We must see the world through her lens.
He was working with people who, in many cases, were suffering from neurological disorders or diseases or injuries from which there was no return to normal. And so part of his work was really always about working with his patients to find their new normal and find who they were in the context of this disease or this injury. And that, to me, it's something so moving. It's something so beautiful about the human spirit, right? Like, let me find your integrity with you. Let me find your dignity with you. He's our North Star, which is what Michael Grassi and the collaborative, the creative team always says. Like, we're always aiming to honor Oliver Sacks.
This is Dr. Wolf.
He's a genius. We might actually learn something.
People say he can't recognize faces.
Wolf.
I think he's a dick.
Yes, Wolf is strange.
I hadn't done television in a little while, certainly a series like this, and it just felt, I don't know. I mean, it was the material, it was the people. Getting to work with Michael Grassi, who's our showrunner, Lee Toland Krieger, who directed our first 2 episodes, and Greg Berlanti and his whole team who are producing the show, has been a real dream. So I think I may have come into it with a little bit of uncertainty as to whether or not this was the right move to make. But as soon as I talked to them, as soon as I engaged them about the show they wanted to make and what they thought it could be, then there was no looking back. It is a bit of a departure for me, I would say, this character, in terms of what people generally associate me with, which is either maybe some more heightened stylized storytelling, sci-fi stuff, or horror, or, supernatural stuff, or a villain. This is very different. I'm always looking for ways to diversify and change up my experience in the roles that I play and the kinds of stories that I tell. I think our episodes tie up with a sense of what's possible. And so there is this feeling of optimism in our show, which I think at this point in our cultural moment, our social moment, I feel really grateful to be putting those stories into the world as opposed to maybe some of the darker stories that I've told in the past.
You make furniture.
Lamps, mainly. the shades myself.
Really? What kind of material do you use?
Skin.
Zero similarities between Oliver Thredson and Oliver Wolf. Zero. But yeah, I never really, I mean, obviously I knew I played a doctor, but I forgot his name was Oliver. He's an inimitable character. I mean, it's really fun because he's quirky, he's socially awkward. He suffers from prosopagnosia, which is face blindness, which was true of Oliver Sacks. So that's a source of conflict for the character and presents obstacles for him. He's not the most socially adept person that you've ever encountered. And so there is some humor in that and some awkwardness that comes from it. You know, he says what he thinks. He doesn't really consider how it might land on somebody else. And he's only driven primarily by his care for the people that he's treating. So yeah, it is quite a departure from Oliver Thredson, I will say that.
Tell me what you are seeing. I like to know what my patients are experiencing.
There is a lot of medical jargon. Well, prosopagnosia took me a minute to figure that out. We have an incredible team of medical advisors. We have an ER doctor who's on our writing staff, so she's a really wonderful resource. We have a great team of nurses who are on set with us every day and helping us understand how to pronounce things, first of all. And second of all, we do a lot of medical rehearsals to make sure that we are approaching any of the medical events that happen on the show with authenticity and the terminology of the brain and the different cortexes and the amygdala and the, you know, all of the kind of, for me, playing a character for whom these terms are second nature and like they just come, I have to have a relationship to them that feels really familiar and really comfortable. And I usually cultivate that on the day. I like that stuff. I like that challenge of language. I can't tell you how many times I've been reading a script for the show and then I'll be like, oh, okay, well that's fake. That didn't, you know, and then I go to Michael, I'm like, Michael, this fake thing that you put in the, it's always real. Like there's one case of a woman who entirely loses her sense of proprioception, our conscious awareness of our body in space. So she loses that. So the signals that go to her from her brain to her muscles are interrupted. And so she's not able to move. And a lot of what we try to accomplish on the show is portraying these experiences that the patients are having in a visceral way for the audience, in a cinematic way for the audience, so that they get a sense of what it might feel like. The pilot episode is a woman who undergoes surgery for epilepsy, and that part of the surgery is successful, so she no longer has seizures. But a byproduct of the surgery is a syndrome called Capgras syndrome. And that is where you lose all emotional connection to the things or the people in your life that you would and should have an emotional connection to.
I've never seen anything like her. She doesn't recognize her sons.
You will find your way through this. I'll be there with you every step of the way.
And so the whole episode is about how do we create a scenario in which she's able to feel that depth of emotion and connection and accountability to her own kids. Those are two examples. I mean, there are many others, but those are the two that I really understood the depth of stories that we were telling here and the magnitude of what those experiences would be for the people who were confronted by them.
She can breathe on her own. Her brain just doesn't know it yet.
He's incredibly brilliant. He knows how to help people, how to change lives, if only he could apply some of that to his own life, to his own intimate relationships. And that's another great thing that we get to explore in the show. Not only do we encounter these patients on a regular basis, but we also explore the emotional, psychological, and intimate connections between the series regulars, between the doctors.
We're close to a breakthrough. Are you?
You know it's a gift. Your condition? It makes you look so much deeper.
Sometimes all it takes is for one person to really see you.
Sophie.
In the case of Oliver Sacks / Wolf, I think he's somebody who felt called to something bigger than himself and had to get to a place in his life where he was able to connect with that and step into it fully and embrace it. And I think that has to come with a period of growing pains and discomfort. And I think that someone who is incredibly intelligent can be perceived as other because they're not always so easy to relate to or identify with. And I think that's certainly true of Oliver Wolf. I think it is human nature to want to dive deeper, to want to go to darker and more complicated places. I think that is actually part of our imperative as human beings. And I don't know why, maybe there's some connection where these experiences creatively have drawn me further on that path for myself as an actor or as a person, you know? I do think that we all bring ourselves to the roles that we play on some level, and I think we bring the roles that we play into our own lives as well. There's an exchange that happens over time.
And lastly, Donna Murphy is part of your ensemble. Are there other Broadway divas you want to be on the show?
Cynthia Nixon, come. Christine Baranski, come. Audra McDonald, come. Just bring them all, basically. The trouble is that pesky Gilded Age has all the Broadway divas on it, so schedules are very complicated. But interestingly, you mentioned Donna Murphy. Donna Murphy and I were in a production of Oliver in 1992, and on our first meeting, I reminded her that we were both in this production of Oliver. She pretended to remember me, but I was like, girl, you don't remember me. But she was like, no, I really, really do. And I was like, yeah, okay, well. But in any event, it's been a delight to work with her. She's so good, and she's really a wonderful addition to the cast. And I hope that we're able to bring, you know, because I come from the theater and go back to the theater as often as I can. And so that is the goal as we move forward, if we get to keep telling these stories, to bring more and more of them up. I think probably, I mean, Spock has like a whole side of him which isn't even human. And I think that he probably, as a result of that, is maybe a little bit super intelligent, like hyper intelligent, not in just a human plane, but on another level. But Oliver Wolf would definitely give him a run for his money. I would love to see that episode of Jeopardy.